What's up guys, we're back on the channel with my sister Kennedy, and today she's gonna give us her best serve and return tips. You guys loved our video last week so much that we decided to start a series where she gives us her best tips on every part of the court. So in today's video, we're covering both the serve and the return. Let's get right into it. All right, Kennedy, starting off with serves, I want your best of the best tip that you think the most possible players need to hear.
Yeah, so to set yourself up for success, you want to make sure that you're having a consistent toss.
A consistent toss. So I guess before we get into the mechanics of that, where do you think players need to be making contact with their serve? And you can show me with this baseball tee. So I think this is actually a helpful tool to depict where players should be making contact.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you're making contact with the ball out in front on every serve if possible. So if you're having your arm set right about where this baseball tee is right now, that's going to help you make sure you can have that consistent contact point.
And obviously, guys, you need to make contact below your waist. So that's why the tee is a little bit low. You'll see some players hitting it up here. That is illegal. Do you think that going out in front a little bit is helpful too?
100%. You want to make sure that you're able to swing forward and through your serve. So the more out in front you toss it, the better.
Cool. So what do you see then, I guess, on players that's making them not let this happen? So like what mistakes are they making?
A lot of time I see my players, they're going to have their arm in line with the baseline, which again, if you do that, you're not going to make contact out in front of you. You're going to kind of sidearm it. So I always tell my players to have their tossing hand slightly out in front of them, a little bit diagonal. That way they can have that contact point.
So as you can see, guys, the ball is actually a little bit into the court. So on an actual serve, what that looks like is Kennedy is able to hit the ball while she's getting her momentum forward into the serve. So if you're not tossing it a little bit out in front, it's going to be impossible to get power. What though on the mechanics of the toss messes people up? Do you see people like throwing the ball or like throwing it sideways?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll see people, they'll either toss it too up high or too far in front, or like I said, a little bit too much from the side here. So I always say you don't want your arm to be too extended straight. You don't want it too bent. You want a slight bend right out in front of you here. And when you release the ball, you want to make sure the tips of your fingers spread open like that.
Do you see people with their hand pointing down too?
I see both, yeah. You'll see the pros, they have to have their hand face down like this, but when you're playing rec play, you don't have to do that. So whether you toss it up or you toss it down, you don't want to move your arm too much all over the place.
And whether you decide to use the upward toss or the downward toss depends on you. It's really just about whatever you can be consistent with. There isn't an advantage to doing either one. I do it with my hand facing down, and I hit it perfectly every single time because I just release. But if you have an accurate toss up, you can do that too. It's really just about what you're consistent with and what you get the best results with. All right, flipping it over to returns. Kennedy, what is your best tip that you have for players on the return?
You want to make sure you have good footwork going into the return. We're going to talk more about the swing later, but for now I really want to focus on that footwork.
Okay, so give me the process of the footwork. Where does it start and where does it finish?
So you want to make sure that you have a really good athletic base here. You can use the split step if you want to, but you don't have to. And from there, you want to make sure you're using your momentum to move through that return in order to get up as quick as possible.
So you're saying when you're waiting for the serve, you want to be in that athletic stance.
100%.
So do you see people not doing that?
Yeah, a lot of times I see people a little bit too upright or they're paddle down, maybe even looking around before they play. You want to make sure that you're ready for this shot.
Okay, so you're in the athletic stance, your opponent's about to hit the serve, what do you do next? Do you move forward before they hit the ball?
If you feel like you could get a little bit of momentum moving into the ball, then yes. Like I said, I do recommend using the split step. That way you can push off into that shot.
Okay, so a split step, guys, you do a split step right when your opponent is contacting the ball. This is sort of an optional technique for the return, but if you want to try it, right when your opponent's hitting the ball, you jump into that split stance, and then she's saying you use that energy to transfer your weight forward through the ball. So I'm going to toss you a ball. Let's see what that looks like. Exactly. So she's getting her momentum forward through the ball, which helps her hit a more solid return. It makes it so you can take a more compact swing, and it takes your energy forward so that you get to the kitchen faster. So let's see another example without a split step. So your opponent's going to hit you the serve. You're going to move forward through the ball. She's coming in, and she's hitting a topspin return. We're going to talk more about the swing and the return later, but let's see a backhand. It's coming in, She's moving forward through the ball. Would you say you're gliding through the ball?
Yeah, I don't want to like be abrupt and force it. I want to make sure that as I'm hitting that motion, like he said, kind of gliding through that shot.
Do any of your students mess that up?
Yeah, sometimes they kind of just run through it sporadically and they're not even really focusing on that good contact point still. So you want to make sure you're taking your time as you're doing this.
So you want to make sure as you're gliding forward, you're focusing on that same contact point that we kind of talked about on the serve. You always want to be hitting the ball out to the side of your body, out in front, regardless of what side it is. Do you see players stopping at all too?
Yeah, sometimes I do see them stopping. Depending on the serve, it's fine, but for the most part, if you're able to continue to move through it, you do want to move through it.
So what she's saying is she sees players running forward to hit the serve, stopping, and then going into the kitchen, which is obviously just not as good because it's going to take you longer to get to the kitchen. And once you get the hang of it, it's much easier to hit a ball as you're moving through it because you can kind of block it more with your arm. So make sure as you're moving through your return, you're not stopping like this, and you are gliding through the ball like this. So she takes her momentum into the kitchen. All right, Kennedy, so back to serves. What is the next best tip you have for players when they're serving?
So when it comes to serves, a lot of times I see players not adding enough topspin to the ball. You want to use topspin so when you accelerate on that serve, it's going to keep it down, and it's also going to hit the ground and kind of jet out at your opponent.
So what she means by this, guys, is when you add topspin, the ball drops quicker, so you can hit it harder without hitting it long past the baseline. Why do you think, though, players aren't getting enough topspin?
It's definitely because of their technique on the serve.
So I guess in terms of technique, can you explain using this wheel what they're doing wrong?
Yeah, so usually they're not getting their paddle low enough under the ball, and they're not angling it down slightly in order to get that brush on the serve.
So they're either coming at it too level, or they're facing their paddle up, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah,
So when you face your paddle up, obviously the ball is going to go up. You have to have your paddle perpendicular to the ground to get that brush. Let's see it on the wheel. So you have to ride up the back of the ball and have that level face so the ball still goes forward and doesn't go straight up. And when you don't get below the ball, what happens is you don't have enough upward momentum to make the ball spin. So you might still get a little spin if you don't get below the ball, but it's not going to be enough to where you really start to see that benefit of topspin. So Kennedy, let's see an actual serve, what it looks like.
So you want to make sure, if you see me right here, I'm getting my paddle low under the ball, and I'm brushing above it with my finish.
So watch her serve, guys. See where her paddle is accelerating from. It's slightly below where she's going to make contact with the ball. Also, look at where she finishes. So you can finish over your shoulder. You can finish out in front. She finishes high. Her paddle's above her head, right? Which this shows that when she's hitting the ball, she's going up. And that is the mechanism that creates that topspin. So the more up you go, the more spin you'll get. Obviously, you need to make sure you're going forward through the ball. But a good rule to see if you're getting topspin is you have to be finishing up high, or else obviously you're not going to be spinning up the back of the ball and you might be hitting the ball flat. So make sure you're accelerating from below the ball and you're finishing above the ball.
And speaking of spin, the best way to get a little boost is by getting a grittier paddle. At Enhance, all three of our paddles use a T700 carbon fiber face, which is the same material that 90% of pros use. This material grabs the ball and rips it off like Velcro. So if you want more spin and don't want to spend too much, check out our paddles. And use code SPIN to get $20 off any paddle.
All right, Kenny, so when it comes to serves, what is the next thing you think players need to be thinking about?
Players really need to be focusing on getting a lot of depth and power, and a lot of that comes down to their technique.
So what do you think are the aspects of technique that make depth and power happen?
The first one I always like to tell players to focus on is acceleration. When I'm watching players, sometimes they're really tight with their swing, and that's going to prevent them from being able to accelerate through that
So let's see an
shot.
example of what that looks like when they do it wrong. So she's tight. She still was able to hit it pretty hard, but she's not, doing a full swing. Let's see now a full swing with a loose arm. So there, guys, you see her arm is looser, so she gets more of a kinetic chain. Her arm functions more like a whip, and she carries her energy through the serve after it. So that's why she's finishing up by her shoulder, is because she doesn't stop her swing on impact. She continues it, and she finishes it over her shoulder. So what is your goal, though, once you have this technique? Where do you want the ball to be landing?
Your goal is to get it in the back third of the court if possible.
So the back third of the box, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you see players falling short of this pretty often?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll see players just trying to make their serve, and they'll hit it towards the middle of the box, sometimes super short as well.
Yeah, so it's okay if you're just getting consistent with your serve, you're not super confident in it yet. You don't have to be aiming deep, but once you start to get more reps and you're getting more confidence, you should start trying to aim deeper because it's worth the risk because your opponents will end up hitting worse returns. Is there anything else in terms of technique that you think is preventing players from hitting the ball deep and hard?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll see people, they'll accelerate, but they're really just using their arm. I always love to tell my players to make sure that they're rotating their hips through the serve.
So does pointing your foot forward help at all with that? I see you're pointing your foot like a little bit forward.
Yeah, for sure. You don't want your toes to be facing the side fence because you want to be able to get your hips from here pushing through towards the net.
So as you can see, guys, she's pointing her front foot at a diagonal angle, somewhere near like the net post, and that lets her body twist through it, which makes it a lot easier to accelerate through the ball. Let's see one like that. Nice. And in terms of height, where are you aiming? Like, how high are you aiming it? Because obviously hitting it higher, guys, helps with depth.
Yeah, I'm honestly hitting it relatively high, at least a few feet above that net, giving myself some good clearance. And as you can see, it helps me get that shot really deep in the court.
So guys, that serve was probably 3 feet above the net and it landed 2 feet from the baseline. By giving yourself a little extra height on the serve, you make it way easier to hit it deep so you don't have to muscle it to get it in that back third. And in terms of how much power do you think that players should be putting on the ball?
Yeah, so when I'm serving, I'm usually swinging about an 8 out of 10. You never really want to go 10 out of 10 because you want to keep that consistency going.
Exactly. You don't need to go 10 out of 10. Pickleball court's not that big. If you're serving as hard as you possibly can, there's a high chance it's probably just going to go out or long, or like you're just going to lose your control and miss in the net. So 8 out of 10 is a good point. And if you're hitting it deep at an 8 out of 10, that's a good indication that your technique is right and you're not muscling the ball, which means you're trying with your strength to hit the ball. You should be trying with your loose energy and your momentum to be getting power. So 8 out of 10, aim a few feet over the net, get that topspin we talked about, and your serves are going to be super effective. All right, Kenny, so when it comes to the return motion, what are the best tips that you have for players?
Players really need to focus on making sure that they're having a compact motion. They don't want to be doing too much with their take back when they go to hit their return.
So that's in regards to backswing.
Yes.
So show me a bad backswing without hitting the ball. Exactly. So when you're hitting the return, guys, you don't want to be taking a big backswing. Show me what a compact backswing looks like. All right, so let's see that on an actual serve. So as you can see, she doesn't take her paddle back ever where it goes to the other side of her body. So a good rule of thumb when it comes to a compact swing is keeping the paddle on the same side of your body that you're going to hit the ball on. And you're not really using much wrist either, right?
No, my wrist is pretty firm as I swing through this motion.
So it's pretty much locked. So she has a locked wrist. She's not taking a big backswing. She's also not taking a big follow through. So it's all really on the same side of her body that she's hitting it. And what spin are you using?
So on that one, I was hitting more of a flat or a slice return, but you are totally able to use some topspin returns as well.
So what do you recommend for players watching? What spin should they use?
You should use whatever spin you feel like you can be the most consistent with. So if you could rip a nice topspin return, go ahead and do that. But if you need more of a block return with that flat or that slice, that's totally fine as well.
So what she's saying is, most players would agree that the topspin return is going to be the most difficult for your opponent's third shot, but it's not that beneficial to use it if you're not consistent with it. So figure out what you're consistent with and use that, and that's going to be what's best for you now. In the long run, you could try to develop a topspin return or develop whatever return that you want to get to the highest possible level. But in the current moment, you're better off using what you're consistent with, and it's totally fine if that's slice or a flat return. A lot of pros still do this. It's not a necessity to be hitting topspin returns, and it does require very good timing.
And guys, that wraps up our lesson for today. Thanks so much for watching. And if you guys like this video, make sure to comment down below what you want to see from us in the future. And guys, if you want to see our video from last week, watch this.